Assalamualaikum and welcome to another interesting episode of CxO BusinessFlix and myself, Shah, Abdullah, your host. Today we have after first of all, I'd like to thank you all for your very engaging your presence and your inputs during the session and even after the session, the previous one. And based on your feedback, we would try and we have even more interesting participants and a very interesting topic about investments. So I look forward to your collaboration and your input and your engagements during the show. And without wasting further time, since it's a very interesting topic, for which I couldn't wait to hand over to my participant, but very quickly, a very brief introduction about our respected participants. We have Mr. Gahtan Vahidy. He's an experienced professional, currently working with JS Investments, and he will take you through take us through his introduction and along with his details and profile. Then we have our Mr. Atif, very senior and seasoned professional once again, country head, CFO, and a board member of IBEX Global UK and VP Treasury as well, and looking after the global portfolio as well. So, and we are also waiting for Maleeha. Maleeha Bangash would be joining us soon in the show. And she is ex-managing director, investment strategy, World Bank Group, Government of Punjab. So, thank you so much, Gahtan and Atif, for joining us. So I'll just immediately, very quickly, sharing my perspective and the idea of the show. Basically, as we discussed, like investment. So investments, when we talk about in general, लोग सबसे पहले आते हैं कि अच्छा investments mean making money. So yes, for sure, we invest to. Obviously, we are talking about financial investments right now, and not the investments that we do on ourselves, that we go to gym and adopt a healthy lifestyle for sure. But the basic understanding about investments in terms of financial assets, purchase, and right into. Hi, Maleeha, and welcome.
Hi, how are you? I was trying to join in, but I couldn't manage somehow, but finally have done it. So hello to everyone. And sorry, apologies for being a little confused in the beginning and couldn't join you.
That's fine. Thank you so much for joining us, and we are live now. So, I was just taking the audience and just through very quickly through the investments, the topic, and then the basic understanding about the investments is like we talk about smart everything, like smart life, smart day, smart house, and smartphones. So, what's smart thinking? So smart thinking, out of many discussions with our respectable and very experienced professionals, with Mr. Atif especially, I came up with this term that okay, it's about diversifying your thinking on the opportunities and options that we have available. And obviously, Gahtan and Maleeha had their own perspective. So very quickly, I'll hand over to Gahtan to sir. Please introduce yourself a little bit and share your views about, and obviously with your perspective of the investments and alternative investments expertise as well, please. Over to you, sir.
Of course. So, can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. So I'm an asset management professional. I've been in asset management since 2004. My speciality has always been alternative investments, which typically means illiquid, sophisticated investments like hedge funds and private equity and some real estate. Currently, I am with JS Investments, which is one of the oldest asset managers in Pakistan. It's been around since the 90s. And I am responsible for actually building a new department, which is going to be called the Private Funds Department, which is going to launch a series of private market products, such as a venture capital fund, an art fund, a hedge fund, and a few other sort of specialty strategies which aren't sort of complete as yet. In terms of what's a smart investment, a smart investment is, I suppose, something where using your common sense and you're minimizing your downside risk. And it can be, as you point out, it can be anything. It doesn't have to be financial. You mentioned earlier, Abdullah, that one should basically describe why do we take financial risk and what are the reasons for it. And quick answer from my side is one takes financial risk in order to increase one's wealth. Typically, if one is conservative, one recommends one has surplus wealth, which is not going to affect your day-to-day expenses. And you can invest it in a variety of assets. ranging from financial assets, securities, and real estate or businesses. Um, uh, is that enough of a definition? Do you need more? I mean, I could go on forever. I don't want to. Yeah.
I know, but that's very nice. Very nice. At least very much there for myself. So yeah. Okay, so thank you, Gahtan Saab. I'll quickly move on to Atif Saab. Atif Saab, if you can share your perspective, and obviously, please, before you start your sharing your perspective, introduce us about yourself.
So, hi everyone. My name is Atif Hafeez, as you know. Finance specialist as a background, but then I ventured into the business and governance sides of things as well. My most recent and the longest part of my career has been within the private and public equity, nationally and globally. I'm based in England, and one thing which is kind of a disclaimer rather, whatever I'm going to say on this call is going to be my personal opinion and doesn't reflect the companies that I'm associated with. Um, and in terms of a smart investment, I guess Warren Buffett said, and I strongly relate to that the most lucrative investment one can make is the investment in oneself. Educate yourself, learn, unlearn, and relearn. And on that basis, whatever financial investment you're going to make is going to be smart investment anyway, whether you make the investment nationally or internationally. That's how I take smart investment. And this is not just my academic or theoretical understanding. I practice that understanding as well. And when you talk about the investment climate, with the particular regard to Pakistan, I guess knowing more and more, equipping yourself, whether you're a retail investor or an institutional investor, learning about what's happening politically, economically in the region and globally, especially what we are all facing, COVID-19 pandemic, is crucial, ever more important for everyone to focus on that. And one other thing that I have practiced myself and advised the others to practice too, you can hire the smartest and the most genius investment advisor to advise you on, but try and exercise your own due diligence. Uh, no matter what is the level of your investment, whether financial or non-financial, direct or indirect, is smart or not so smart, but use your due diligence as the first and the last resort before you take a decision. So if you have taken into account those two or three measures, I think whatever you're going to invest in is going to be a smart investment.
Very right, sir. Very true. Explains a lot. Thank you so much. And we will take this discussion. There's so many points that I have to I wanted to take up further, but thank you, Maleeha, for joining us once again. So I'll request you to introduce yourself, but also share your perspective as Gahtan and Atif has already touched upon a few things, very high level, but still, in your perspective, I expect you to please share with us the startup perspective, so that there are so many people in Pakistan जिनके पास I would say मतलब starting from 5 to 6 million, जिस तरह उन्होंने retail investor से और आगे institutional investment की बात की, तो starting from 5 to 6 million for small scale से लेके कितना बड़ा और किस scale तक जा सकते हैं, just quickly. Thank you so much.
Okay. So thank you so much for having me, and lovely to be on this panel, and thank you for the audience who are tuning in today. And I'm going to take the start by just giving the audience who are out there and who are taking time out to listen to us, to tell you a little bit about my background. So I am basically a finance and investments professional. I have spent maybe past at least 10 years in Pakistan, and before that around 6 years in Singapore and in Turkey. And I have also been working in Singapore on the investments and asset management side and the private equity side. And a little bit about my background, my educational background is I have done my master's in finance and investments from the University of Chicago. Booth School of Business. So I'm trained for more or less this. In my recent years, I have been working in JS Investments as a Chief Strategy Officer, in Habib Asset Management as the Deputy CEO, and in UBL as the Chief Strategy Officer as well. So I have UBL funds, that is, to have an understanding of what's happening in the local market, plus what was happening. I could bring back some of the learnings from the international market, and I want to share them with you, all of you who are tuning in today. So that's a bit of my background. My most recent work that I have been doing with in a project where I was the managing director for a unit that was set up by the World Bank called the Investment Climate Reform Unit. And we just heard Mr. Atif talk about the investment climate, and this encompasses everything from access to finance, to access to infrastructure, technology, to ease of doing business, everything that encompasses a good climate for investments, for new investments to come, and for existing businesses to flourish. So this is the context. Now, the question that was put before me was like, what is a smart investment? So first of all, I think I'm going to just say that a smart investment is an informed investment. Just remember information. So who's going to keep you informed? You yourself are going to keep yourselves informed. And so before you get yourself and your hard-earned money or your precious resources or your time into anything, you need to do your research. You need to find out there are a lot of options out there. So I'm giving you a blanket statement that whether you're talking about it, whether you're a startup or an SME or an individual, whether you are putting your funds in or your money into funds such as asset management or advisory funds, or whether you're putting your money into a bank account, or whether you're putting it into a business that you're starting up, or whether you're becoming a partner with somebody, you have to do your homework. So know the fundamentals of what you're getting into. So this is a very blanket statement. It's a rule of thumb. All of us must take your time. Don't get carried away. Second principle that I want to tell you is that there are a lot of, like you heard Mr. Gahtan, you heard Mr. Atif, there are a lot of financial advisory and professionals and institutions. There are firms that offer this kind of a service. They do it for they do it very much for a very nominal and for a small fee. But what they do is they do guide you as per your needs. So always identify your needs, your financial goals, and your appetite for risk. So, and your appetite for risk is always linked to the stage of life you're in. So if we are talking today to a majorly young audience, I would guess that they would be more perceptive and receptive rather to risk taking, and hence they will be seeking more reward. So never can you get reward without taking commensurate risk. And that risk reward ratio will provide you the optimal returns that we are looking for. So this is a general that I want everyone to kind of register and remember. The other question which was very pertinent, was you were talking about startups, and you were talking about SMEs, and you touched upon something that is very, very critical these days, is that what do they do? Where do they invest? Or rather, perhaps they have the ideas, they have the wherewithal, they have the management, they have the energy, they have perhaps a small company that they want to take further. So for them, I think the main issue would be, where do they get investors from, or investment from, or where do they get finance from, whether it's in the form of a loan, which is a debt, or whether it's in the form of investment, which is equity as a shareholding. So that's a very critical question. And in my recent work, I have been working a lot with startups, with young entrepreneurs, with even chambers such as the Sialkot Chamber, which is basically a cluster of it is made up of SMEs. The idea now for SMEs and access to finance is one that is, touching a lot of a lot of people's hearts, in the sense that a lot of investors are now looking for small to medium or even micro entrepreneurs and enterprises, where they can put investment and see that trajectory of growth, because naturally then the returns are good. But there's another thing that is out there, and that is good news for a lot of the young people with great ideas out there. These days, more and more corporations and investors are interested in impact investment, which means that if you're a young person and you have a great idea, for instance, you are doing something in solar or renewable energy, or you're doing something which is specific to gender empowerment, or there is something that will have an impact, a social impact, then these days investors and funds are looking for opportunities to invest in companies that can provide a triple bottom line, which is the returns, economic returns. The second bottom line is the social impact or the social returns. And the third is the environmental impact. So if you can provide, if your value proposition is such, there are investors out there who are seeking young people like that. So that's the good news. Now, this is very general. How to find them is another story.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's quite a detailed perspective. And Atif, would you like to add on this perspective? Yeah, you're on mute, Atif. Just a second, Atif, your mic is still mute.
Oh, my apologies. So first of all, Maleeha, thank you so much for setting the stage for further discussion. Very interesting points. And I'm going to stick to the climate in Pakistan right now, the investment climate or the economic climate, and then make references to the global economies as we see right now. I think we're going to have to very closely look at what COVID-19 pandemic is doing with the economy at all levels in Pakistan and outside as well. A lot of lessons that we learned previously, a lot of learning that we have had before the COVID-19 lockdown started is going to be redundant. And that is a conversation at the global economic stage right now. So we are certainly going to have to learn new things, new knowledge. Pakistan is well placed, in my opinion, in terms of the kind of youth we have, the digital literacy, which is increasing in Pakistan day by day, the strength of social media, especially the potential of social media to impact the learning of people positively, should not be discounted. And therefore, another very emerging aspect is that the comfort zone that a lot of youngsters and not so young people as well have enjoyed in full-time employments, long-term employments, that comfort zone is going to be broken pretty soon, and is breaking up as we see. A lot of jobs have been lost in the US, to give you just an example. Now, when the jobs are lost, we saw that after the 2008-2009 financial crisis too, that the skilled, educated, and experienced individuals ventured into starting their own businesses. Back then, the understanding, the knowledge that prevailed was old, or at least older than what it is right now. And therefore, the ecosystem for startups and scale-ups is going to increase, even in Pakistan. And with that potential increase in startups, micro business that Maleeha pointed out, people who are going to have parallel careers, for example, they're gonna stay in their full-time employment, and at the same time would like to start a parallel source of income by is starting a small business, perhaps with a view to just switch over in 2 or 3 years' time. All of those new emerging ideas are going to require financial availability in the economy. And if we stick to, for the sake of this discussion, if we confine ourselves to the two metropolitans in Pakistan, that is Karachi and Lahore, we're going to have to then, try and break it down into what exactly is the general understanding of the people as to the investment avenues available to them. For example, I'm going to divide my comment into two broader categories of discussion. One is that entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs who have very good ideas because they have had that experience, that skill set, that knowledge over the past few years. Now they are to start entrepreneurial career of their own, but they don't have money. They
Okay,
don't
yeah.
have access to the
So we will come back to this. This is one point which Maleeha has also raised, and we will definitely touch base on this one. Gahtan, are you with us?
I am sorry. I was slow at
Okay.
unmuting.
If you could also share with us your
Hey,
perspective
of course.
on this, and also if you would add your perspective in terms of the core products, and when I say core, like the products coming from the financial institutions for let's target the institutional investments and the opportunities for SMEs, and then in the next phase I will touch base upon the other and the lower side of the investment that and in with reference to digital literacy. But over to you.
Sure. Okay, so just once again, caveat again from my side, like Atif, these all personal opinions and don't reflect the constant opinion of my employer. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, there's such a wide array of opportunities or possibilities. Everybody's touched upon them in different ways, and it does get very confusing. And I think one way of simplifying this is to try and understand two important things. One is illiquidity, and one is volatility, price volatility. So everybody has a different set of needs, and one has to understand before one sets in. I think Maleeha said, one has to make informed
Bilkul.
decisions. I think that's very core to this discussion. That
Yeah.
what is one's appetite for liquidity or illiquidity, and what is one's appetite for volatility in an asset price. Let's assume, for example, that one has spare cash, and but they need to dip into it regularly, right? In which case, doing venture investing or private equity investing in businesses, direct businesses, is a highly illiquid exercise, and it creates problems for people with short-term cash flow needs. So, so one recommends that people who are making these investments, which carry a great deal more risk than conventional financial investments, should either have very deep pockets or have very high risk sort of tolerances, right? So for the more conservative, one recommends financial securities because they tend to have liquidity, starting from a savings account to government instruments to equity. Sorry, forgive me. Um, so, so we have from here, I mean, is there a lot of opportunity in the SME space? Yes. Is there a lot of
Yeah.
opportunity in the tech space? Yes. But is it for you? One has to decide that. And if one can take an honest, and frankly, there is no rocket science to this. There used to be a joke. My boss used to say that, a monkey can do your job. And he used to tell me that repeatedly in London. And, it's something one learns. When one enters this industry, one views the financial industry from afar, you are met with a lot of jargon and tech speak, which is confusing, and it makes things sound a lot more complicated than they need to be. So I think, yes, anyone who's earnestly and genuinely interested in the financial market, be it on the direct business investing side or the financial security side, they can learn about it. It is not rocket science. It's not astrophysics. It's if you have a genuine interest, you learn. So that is something, again, I think going back to something Maleeha said, that you don't need to be dependent on others. It is your choice. So if you are of that personality where you want to drill into how companies work and how financial statements work, yes, by all means, try and source private business investment opportunities because the rewards are phenomenal or can be phenomenal, as are the risks. If you are more interested in just earning an additional income from your basic income, then perhaps stick to more conservative interest bearing or economic instruments which earn you a more secure form of income. So yeah, I mean, is there anything else you'd like me to touch on?
Just to add on the question, and then perhaps I'll move on to Atif as well. I mean, you touched Atif. You said digital literacy की आपने बात की, and then we spoke about Maleeha also spoke about कि there are investors and lending के लिए लोग available हैं जो पैसे देना चाहते हैं काम करने के लिए, and at the same time there is a gap जहाँ पे लोग they are comfortable putting their money in their reserves, and even I would say like 30-40 million in PKRs. I would say Pakistan की market की हम बात करें, they keep it with the retail investors and वो सारे लोग जो कि सिस्टम में नहीं है, जिसका कोई पैसे का इकोनॉमी को कोई फायदा नहीं हो पा रहा है. तो how is this the digital literacy that we need to to enhance to tell people about कि किस तरह से कहाँ से आ सकते हैं, और the gap is with the available options. हम किस तरह से what is more important on this? And similar question I'll come to Maleeha as well later, but Shah, you on the mute?
I'm so sorry. So I think it's both. So let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about the available options. Options are increasing in Pakistan as I see them. Sitting in England, watching the Pakistan economy, the fintech scene is evolving. A lot of gig economy options are emerging in Pakistan, especially in major cities. People have started to see them as viable options of usage. Now, here is a very simple but very forgotten point. When the users gain trust in using new technology, digital technology, or digitally driven business enterprises, that is the point to actually embark upon another journey to establish the trust for the investors. Because the users and the consumers and the customers have started to use gig economy products, for example, Careem, Uber, Food Panda in Karachi. So they are certainly having trust in using those products. And Abdullah, I see you speaking, but I can't hear you because you're doing exactly what I've been doing.
Sorry, apologies. So just adding up, and I'll let you continue. Okay, sir, इसमें फिर आपको क्या लगता है कि कहाँ पे गैप कहाँ पे आ रहा है इसमें प्रोडक्ट्स का अवेलेबिलिटी का गैप, जिस तरह से हमारे पास पेपैल और अमेजोन पेमेंट सर्विसेज या इस तरह के पेमेंट सर्विसेज हैं जहाँ पे लोग अपना पैसा वॉलेट के अंदर डाल के एंड दे लीव इट, दे हैव दिस ट्रस्ट. क्या ये ट्रस्ट का डेफिसिट है या गैप है, या उस पर्सपेक्टिव से भी
trust gap will always be there in every economy. That's what my understanding is. I operate in multiple countries, have worked in multiple countries. I see that the trust gap is always there. How do you bridge that trust gap?
You
provide dependable information and knowledge to the people, which is easily accessible. Give you an example. In England, for example, we have what we call which.com, which, W-H-I-C-H, not the other which. What it does, it teaches you the basics and the fundamentals of investments available in UK economy, the avenues for the people, for the regular people, for people who are small to medium businessmen or businesswomen, who are not as corporate savvy or official savvy as those who are corporate workers. They can access that information and they can depend on that information because that information has been verified, ratified by those who are credible. Remember one thing, investment thrives on trust. No matter which country you're talking about, no matter which sector you're talking about, if the trust is lacking, nobody's going to invest in. So first of all, with all those positive things happening in Pakistan, like digital policy being announced only recently, the digital literacy that I keep talking about, the digital democracy that we talk about, and we are basically working towards it under the current governmental rule. All of those things have to be taken into account, and then work on this very basic, very fundamental, long-standing, classical concept of building and inculcating the trust into the minds of the people who are looking at the product. For example, if you launch a product tomorrow, a fintech product, you're going for a crowdfunding from the people and from the institutional investors. I should have a vehicle or a channel to verify and validate what you're saying to me. In the absence of that, I'm not going to take anything on the face of it, of course. I'm going to do my due diligence, as we have talked about on this call. Maleeha talked about it. And due diligence is the key. So those are the two things. A, make use of what is happening right now, what is evolving right now. B, make the dependable knowledge and learning available for the people so that they can make use of it on a very simple basis.
So, Maleeha, I mean, with again a positive note, 150 million plus subscribers and having major shares, but still, जो लोग हमारे fintech में use कर रहे हैं, basically it's like the major share still goes to the basic payment transfers, and then I mean mobile top-ups and so on and so forth. So, out of the 21-22 digital.
I think we lost. I can't hear you, but I do get the gist of what you were saying, and I agree with you. I think that's a great point. I think that primarily जो अभी digital की और बात हो रही है, उसमें क्या issues हैं?
Hello.
Shall I continue? I think I got your gist. Hello. Yes, we can hear you. I can hear you. So, so to answer your question, Abdullah, basically issue जो है, issue इस वक्त जो हमें face हो रहा है, वो despite all the talk and you rightly pointed out that there's a whole array of fintech companies providing perhaps different types of platforms. You even spoke of crowdfunding, and there are different attempts and efforts being made. And to greater or lesser extent, they are quite functional and available. But what is the missing link? What is the gap? And we're all talking about the digital revolution. We're all talking about the smart environment, a smart environment being the environment where everybody's connected through through technology and so basically I think that the missing link, and from what I have experienced, because I go and I work with a lot of people who are working on the digital side, especially in the finance sector, and the main problem is that digital, जिसको हम कहते हैं adoption या digital awareness जो है, that's the missing link. The missing link is not that even awareness perhaps is not the missing, but the adoption. The missing link is that majority of the people, even though they know that they have the option of perhaps doing something online, are not comfortable with it, are perhaps, there was a little bit of talk about trust. Perhaps trust has something to do with it, but to be honest, I think many of them are not aware how easy life will become if they do, use these digital apps. The younger generation, however, are very comfortable with it. The urban generation, the urban dwellers are very comfortable. लेकिन फिर भी बहुत बड़ी ऐसी एक segment है, including women. And I also talk about women entrepreneurs, women who are also in the corporate world. So it's not that people in the corporate world are far more comfortable with digital, sort of adoption. No. They have this is the on the ground reality in Pakistan. It may be very different even in India or some other country, but however this is the case even in the urban centers. अब उसको कैसे address किया?
Challenges everywhere, but Exactly.
Appropriate risk, yes, that's the main thing. Now, the thing is that this links into what we were talking about, the impact of, and I think there was also a question like that. So I'll address the person who was questioning, and I'll say, I think one of the impacts of COVID has been on businesses, on individuals, that we have been forced to use and and adopt technology as much as we can. But again, I'll go back to what Abdullah said. We were having a chat with the Ijaz CEO, and he was saying that they've given like services, or they've provided services in these past 1 or 2 months to about 14 million users, right? Have used it for the transactions, but it's mostly payment. Payment is what we are using, right? Jazz Cash and other payment, easy tarah, easy paisa, and all. But actually using it to the full potential, I think people are not even aware. But this whole time
Exactly.
is going to be the inflection point. This is my belief, that it's going to be an
So
inflection point.
some responsibility goes to back to the service providers as well to come up with more awareness material and literacy of the product to the right people and the customers, and in
Yes.
general to the masses.
Yes.
So, good. Thank you. Gahtan, I'll rather merge two questions that I can see from Iftikhar and Kanwal. It's like, and quite relevant since we are talking about investments, and not in general just for Pakistanis living here, but for the people living outside and still willing to invest and come back with their investments to Pakistan. So, what are the chances of secure foreign investments? And as Iftikhar said, what are the circumstances? I mean, in Pakistan for to develop sort of a new something, it's a be it industry or part anything, any financial investments that we can potentially have in Pakistan.
Is this specifically in relation to tech, SME, and fintech, or is it generic? I mean,
No, it's a generic question. It's a
really,
generic question, and obviously all the challenges that we have, I mean, with the digitals and the fintech. So these are the available options that we have so far discussed and
okay. Well, I suppose to begin with, I mean, if it's focusing on offshore investors, one thing would be that fintech has now enabled a rapid, cleaner transfer of money, cross-border transactions. There's a great software I'm using, or company app called TransferWise, which now transfers money from my UK bank account to my Pakistani bank account in 10 seconds. So before I had to do a wire transfer through my bank to Pakistan, and because frankly both banking systems are hideously corrupt and they make money wherever they can, what should be a 24-hour transaction becomes a 48-hour transaction. So one is it's become very easy to do it because technology has enabled that. So that's a good thing. There's unfortunately OECD economies are low yield, right? There's very little yield there. There's things in Pakistan are a lot more volatile, but they're also much more high yielding. I mean, a simple thing for at least Pakistani expats who've got enough spare cash would be just to buy our government bonds, because in dollar terms they yield better than anything you'll get in the West. So that would be a simple, very conservative investment to make. And again, if you want to be on the risky side, our valuations, our equity valuations, are way lower, relatively speaking, to OECD equity valuations. So there's a lot more upside here, and that comes with the innate volatility and risk that is prevalent in the market. So it depends what you want, really, right? But I would say, even if you're just going for something safe and
so
simple, you could open a dollar account in Pakistan and make a better yield than one sitting in London.
Atif, the part of the question still that I initially is still there. I mean, how to connect, how to bridge the gap, be it technology or be it, and how to connect and also bridge the gap from this digitalization और वहाँ पे पहुँचे यहीं से थे कि हम how to bridge the gap between those who want to start, have an idea, and for those जो के invest करना चाहते हैं, and obviously they are looking for options. So in दो लोगों को how to bridge the gap and how to connect this.
Well,
What are the platforms, or what could be the platforms, or what are the available possible options?
look, first of all, the answer is in your questions. We need a bridge, right? And that bridge is dependable access to information and knowledge. Now, am I talking about something unique or out of the world? No. Is this, uh, has this gap been bridged, as we put it, anywhere else in the world? All over the place. Do we have to reinvent the wheel? We don't need to. We simply have to replicate the model of the other emerging markets, how they have actually bridged that gap. Again, borrowing your term, and then put it into practice in Pakistan. Again, I keep talking about, and I'll keep talking about this, no matter how long this call goes on. That there is a huge potential for digital maneuvering in Pakistan via social media. The positive and powerful use of social media is going to bridge that gap quite rapidly and quite fruitfully. People have done that. People are still doing that. Most of the countries in Africa, for example, we don't seem to talk about African economies in that detail in Asia. But if you look a little bit deeper, in African countries trying to adopt digital technology, digital awareness, digital options to bolster their domestic economies, especially from the investment point of view, they're actually doing exactly the same things with the Western countries or emerged or developed economies have already done. It's just that they customize it and implement it. And Gahtan's point about the foreign invest, I mean, bringing FDI in Pakistan is pretty simple. What do? You just look at the strong points, right? For example, in case of Pakistan, what is the strong point? Vibrant, energetic, evolving youth, educated youth. I know that the literacy is a debatable point in Pakistan, but still, the education is on the rise, relatively speaking, if you do the time series analysis. That is a strong point for any FDI potential. What is the weaknesses? What are the weaknesses? So one weakness that I can think of is volatility in government policy making and security risk. Now, you just list down the strong points, increase them, list down the weak points, decrease them, FDI is going to increase. It has already been on the rise. I think if I recall correctly, last year in 2019, it was 2.2 billion FDI recorded through the government channels or reported by the government channels. So I think that's a very simple methodology. Remember one thing: investors, regardless of where they are, they're like pigeons. You disturb them, they're not going to easily come back. They just fly off. So you have to treat them with that sensitivity, build the trust, maintain it. Do not give them any sort of doubt in terms of volatility. I mean, necessary volatility is always going to be there, but unnecessary volatility, lack of continued patterns is what scares investors. Whether you're talking about institutional investors or you're talking about investors through the FDI channels. So those points are pretty basic, I suppose. But it's just that now that we have started to talk about this, we have to focus on those points. Again, I strongly believe that in most areas we do not have to reinvent the wheel. We simply have to learn what the other countries, other economies have done, replicate them, customize them a little bit according to the local climate of Pakistan, and then implement them, and then see the results emerging.
I think we've lost Abdullah again.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So let me ask you, Maleeha, a very quick question while we are waiting for Abdullah to join.
Yeah.
From in a board of investment in Pakistan or investment.gov, when people go there, they find a lot of optimism being spelt out. Of course, it has to be.
Mm-hmm.
Whilst working from a global perspective, like World Bank that you talked about, or in your introduction, how do you take the optimism bias out of the conversation? That's what I struggle with. How do you do that? Sorry, Abdullah, I ended up asking a question in your absence. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That's fine because I had introduction and I hope it's sorted now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, it was a great question. It's a great question, Atif, and I will answer it. I'm going to say a small thing just for the audience. My name is Maleeha Bangash, and the ticker is saying Maleeha Lodi, and that's not me. That is someone very famous and very accomplished, where I hope that someday I can be there, but I'm not there at all. So just to clarify, my name is Maleeha Bangash. Great question by Atif. But before that, I think what was being discussed by the panel was foreign investments. And I guess there are two types of foreign investments. One is the FDI, which is the foreign direct investment, which is mostly in the form of an investor going into a company, जैसे ये CPEC investments हम आजकल देख रहे हैं, या किसी there could be, like I was talking about a bit earlier, an international fund that looks at specifically, say, an environmentally friendly project or a social impact fund which wants to support women entrepreneurs or startups, and they are investing direct in terms of equity into that is foreign direct investment. The other aspect is the CP or the foreign portfolio inflows, जिसे हम कहते हैं investment portfolio inflows. वो होते हैं जो stocks वगैरह में होते हैं, जिनकी अभी earlier हम बात कर रहे थे. I think Gahtan was talking about that. There are that can be in the stock market, that can be, I guess, into mutual funds, which have the option of capital guaranteed mutual funds, which are closed funds. So they're very secure. Then there is, and just to build on the conversation earlier, we were talking about, because I want to answer this question, कि foreign investors के लिए secure investments क्या हैं? So yes, very much money market and bonds जिसकी बात हुई थी, फिर capital guaranteed जो funds होते हैं जो capital protection देते हैं आपकी capital को. And the third sort of avenue would be perhaps, जो आप अगर direct, if you're an institutional investor, you can go direct also into bonds. At this point in time, I want to very much clarify one thing. I think this thing is very important for all our viewers, is that we are in a point in time where there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think Atif, ये आपकी भी question को थोड़ा सा address है. We have to be very conscious and very careful कि हम predict कुछ नहीं कर सकते. Even all our years of even generally when we as investment managers or as we are pitching to a client or we're having a talk, we always say past performance is not a guarantee or a prediction of future performance. We always give this qualifier, am I right? And so this is because you cannot, based on what's happened in the past, you cannot predict the future. And now of all the times, so everything that you're hearing today, everything we may be telling you in principles correctly, and all three of us, four of us as professionals are saying things, but we qualify that these are unprecedented times. So we don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months to 1 year, perhaps 2 years. So markets are going to surprise everybody. So secure investment view, ये बहुत जरूरी था. आतिफ की छोटी सी एक concern थी, and I think I should answer that. He was saying that there's always an optimism bias. Like if you go to a government website, or you go to perhaps anybody pitching internationally. For instance, if you're going on a road show also, I mean, this is not just government. If you go on a road show and you're going abroad and you're pitching some TFCs to international investors, or some sort of an opportunity here in Pakistan, you'll always have an optimism bias that everything's fantastic and everything. So I'm going to give you something contrarian, something that I really believe in. I believe that money flows where opportunity is. That's the end. Yeah. All right. You can only pitch so much. You can only be so optimistic. Reality is that investors in these days, especially when we are talking of big ticket investors, will do their homework. they will look at the, and you see, we in the investment world, when I was looking after this investment climate reform unit, we used to talk about what we call the location offer. So the location offer is that if Pakistan is strategically well placed, has the right political economy, and has the right potential, the location overall, then people will, as in investors and investment, will flow towards it. That is your first. That's why we talk about the investment climate overall. And the location offer has a very big part of that, is कि आपके rules and regulations किस तरह हैं, how easy is it for them to invest, how business friendly is the environment, how easy and how straightforward is the taxation, are there any incentives for investors to invest there, and then of course returns. But again, I'll say one more thing. There is always, returns are never seen in isolation. Returns are seen with the risk taken.
Yeah.
So obviously, if some investor is coming here, they will be thinking of some amount of risk that they are taking. They are not coming to Pakistan because it's perfect. They are coming because possibly they feel that they may be able to invest here and get very good returns. And if you look at some of our multinationals, and I'll talk about Nestle, I'll talk about Unilever, in their historical, and again, I'm not talking about the future, I'm talking about the past. In their historical performance, some of the times they have been the highest in the region. Pakistan has been one of the highest performing in terms of profitability. So, what I'm saying about the optimism is, yeah, we try to be optimistic, we try to paint the rosy picture, but in the end, it evens out, because you can. It's only so much you can say.
So yeah, thank you, Maleeha, and I hope Atif, you also got some clarity around your question. And just quickly adding upon what Maleeha just explained very in detail, and especially the thing that money flows where opportunities are. So, Gahtan, what do you think? Is there a room for us to have some more collaboration? Just one last question before we move to conclude the show. Collaboration. I am always am keen to learn कि हम collaborations करके और किस तरह से how we can add up bits and pieces and make a big thing, sort of ecosystem. Or so, is there any room for collaboration? And obviously there are. So your perspective on this?
I mean, collaboration amongst sort of participants or stakeholders or everyone. I mean, can you be more specific?
the institutes, yes.
All right, but I mean, I think at some level
the collaboration between who are the institutions basically for investments, and then for and again setting up the right platform. What could be the platform and what are the opportunities? I mean, is there any opportunity जहाँ पे हम 2-3 लोगों को जिस collaborate करा के और कोई ecosystem develop कर सकते हैं, या बड़ी firms जो already अच्छे market players हैं और इस situation में जहाँ पे collaborate करके और एक overall economy के लिए कुछ बेहतर product या बेहतर चीज बना सकते हैं, कुछ काम कर सकते हैं.
Platforms तो बहुत सारे हैं, right? There's Chamber of Commerce. I mean, for the fund management world, there's MUFAB. The banks have their own association. There's a plethora of platforms which are meant for businesses and I suppose market participants to collaborate with. The problem, I think, is much more deep-rooted. It's cultural. It's we're in a state of evolution. We're going to keep evolving. I think if the powers that be, the larger dominant market participants who have more clout, the government, multilateral institutions that influence how this market works, if they can lead the way in terms of, setting norms for the market, setting principles for the market, a principle of collaboration, of trying to ensure there are better flows of communication, trying to ensure that, from something Atif said right at the beginning, from a policy and regulatory environment, investors, be they Pakistani or offshore, are protected within reason, right? I mean, nothing's perfect.
So, policies, you have right said. Do you think that the current policies are supportive to the people?
I think that every government.
Very quickly, I know.
Very quickly. I'll be very quickly. I think that every government makes some policies which are beneficial, and some policies which are not beneficial. I think, unfortunately, in our experience, our macro policies have been not beneficial, and that's why we are constantly in this up and down yo-yo phase. Short answer.
I see. So we are running out of time, and so very quickly, Atif, just concluding note from your side and a message for all, and then I'll move on to Maleeha and Gahtan again. Atif, starting from you.
In conclusion, I mean, Pakistan is a thriving nation. I strongly believe in the potential for more and more investment. So we just have to seize the opportunity. COVID-19 is a threat, but every threat brings the opportunities as well. We have to be vigilant. We have to make use of our positives and carry on with it.
Right, Maleeha.
Well, very similar to what Gahtan and Atif are saying. I think it's a very unique time right now, and then in a certain way, it's a great blessing because all of us can just step back and think about what we really want to do, prioritize our lives, prioritize how we want to live, and if we've left out something, including certain investments, certain needs we need to address, perhaps this is the time to do our homework, to understand what we need to do, and start doing it.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Gahtan, please, over to you.
I have nothing to add to that. I mean, I think that both my colleagues have done a great job. I think, yes, I mean, look, one thing is this environment is providing everybody with a lot of time. And one should use that time to one's advantage, whether it's, learning about new things or spending more time doing things you enjoy. Your family take a step back from, this constant rat race all of us usually find ourselves in. One can look at I mean, we know it's a hard time for a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of people are in a lot more stress. And we should be grateful for our health and our situation.
Good. Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead, Maleeha.
I just say everyone stay safe and stay healthy.
Yeah. So I'd like you for a very positive throughout. I mean, what we get to know is that even considering the situation which is across the globe, still in Pakistan we are hopeful and we are positive that we have good options available. And it's just about being wise and picking up your options wisely and correct options. And again, as Maleeha and all the participants agreed upon, the research and knowing your requirement and then taking your decision. So that's one thing. And yes, the good thing is that we have the digital shift that we spoke about a little bit. Definitely is a big topic to discuss. So the shift has already started. So the problem of pulling people has now come to a certain point, jahan pe people. I mean, myself, I'll discuss about my home. So we have started to order more things online rather than as compared to what we used to do before COVID. So the shift is already there. So with this positive, all the positive things that we discussed and all the positive hopes, inshallah, keeping fingers crossed and hope we have good options and available and we are going in a good direction going forward. So thank you so much once again and for your time. Thank you all viewers for joining us. Inshallah, we'll see you next week with new participants and some more interesting topics. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Be safe and take care.